But healing is just the beginning. Healing is not the end. And so many of us who have been on this journey have this misconception that, oh, I'm healed and now everything is fine. Oh, I'm healed and now it's just going to magically fall from the sky. Oh, I'm healed. So now I can levitate. Now I can instantly manifest. Now I can walk through walls. No. Healing brings you to the point where you can now begin the transformation process because healing is for the human and it moves you backwards. Transformation is for the entirety of you. Transformation is inclusive of the human and the metahuman, the non-physical self, the higher self, the expanded infinite self, and that is what moves you forward. That is what expands you beyond. That is what moves you across the threshold into the new world. So healing, the life you have been asking for will feel unfamiliar because it's new. You've been manifesting your new reality and it's here. Whether or not you are aware of it, you are in the new reality. The reason that it feels so uncomfortable is because you have never operated at this level before. Think about it like going to the gym and working out. When you go from lifting 25 pounds to 50 pounds, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. It's going to require you to check your balance suddenly, to check your form, and to be really deliberate and take a little bit of extra time because you just doubled your weight. The reason that you feel lost is because you're trying to project the old version of you into the new life. Hey everybody, it's me, Amar. Welcome to your August energy update. I am entitling this one, This Is Why You're Lost, which I promise isn't clickbait. I just am seeing over and over and over from my own experience and from all of the client work that I've been doing and from people that I'm talking to in my circles and just hearing from them that so many of us are looking around going, how do I do this? What? I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing here. I don't understand how I'm supposed to be doing it here. I don't understand really where I'm going or what I'm doing. It feels awkward. It feels odd. It's like you've just tried on a new outfit, a new set of clothes that you've never worn before, and you just don't really understand how to function in it yet. So what I'm going to do for you in this month's update is I have a message here that I'm going to begin with, offering you some insight and some feedback that I've been receiving from my guidance, and then I'm going to do a channeling. Basically, this channeling is exactly what I do in my one-on-one sessions. The first thing that I do before I get any information from you, I read cold. I don't want you to tell me anything. I don't want you to share with me any details or what's going on with you. The first thing we do, we connect, we have a little bit of chit chat, then I get quiet, I connect, I open the space, and then I share a channeled message directly from your higher self. The old you can't possibly handle the new experience. This is why you've had to grow and evolve so much and let so much go, because the old version of you is not the version of you that is going to be inhabiting the new reality. When you are trying to intellectually understand how the current you will ever be able to function in the new life, you immediately reach a dead end. That's because you're using the mind to try and understand something that is impossible for the mind to comprehend. The mind only has access to what is happening now and what has happened up until now. The mind cannot possibly project the new version of you into a future timeline because it can't even conceive of the new version of you yet. The current reality or the current version of you that is inhabiting this reality is not the same you that is going to be functioning in the new reality. It's kind of like if you think about when you were a kid, like when you were 5 years old and you're trying to imagine what it will be like when you're an adult and what's going to happen when you get married. The 5-year-old version of what it's going to be like to grow up and get married is really sweet and it's really adorable and it's super, super cute, but it's not at all realistic. It's very, very romantic. It's very, very simplified and it's really, really naive. And essentially, it's imaginary. It's just a made up version of what that life is going to be like. It's nowhere near what the reality of being a grown adult is actually like. It's the same thing with trying to understand how future you will be thriving in a new reality, right? And I see this all of the time. If we're sitting and we're meditating and we're envisioning and we're trying to project ourselves into this new reality, into this new timeline, it's only ever the most current version of ourselves that we can project into the future. You've never been this version of you consciously before, so you have no way of knowing what this version of you is going to be like or how it is going to live within the new reality. Now, certainly that version of you exists on some level, but until it is embodied and integrated into your current level of awareness, into your current consciousness, there's no way that you can really begin to understand how that's going to happen. So it's really a process of allowing. It's really a process of, sort of taking yourself out of that future projection and allowing yourself to be present with the discomfort. Allow yourself to be present with the process of growth and evolution. You are not powerless here. On the contrary, you are so powerful that you've been able to manifest this new life, and now it's here. And the next step on your journey is giving yourself the grace of not knowing. Lean into the discomfort, lean into the unfamiliar, lean into the awkwardness of, I don't really know how to say this word, or I don't really know how to communicate these thoughts, or I don't really know how to navigate according to this new set of ideas and this new belief system because I've never experienced it before. I've never put it to the test before. It's kind of like, when you're a kid and you get your driver's license, you get your learner's permit, and you learn to drive on a specific car, and then you go and you get a new car. It's new. You've never driven this car before, so I have to adjust things. I have to change the seat. I have to change the tilt of the steering wheel. I have to learn, what looks like, the new rear view mirror, the new side mirrors, all of those little adjustments that have to occur in order for you to get really, really comfortable driving the new vehicle, and in order for that process to be effortless and conscious and something that you don't even have to consciously think about all of the time. That takes time. That takes experience. That takes lived context. The old you is gone. And especially if you're trying to live it through the mind, again, only has access to your history. It does not understand what the new version of you will be like, how the new version of you will inhabit this reality, and it has no way of even understanding that the new version of you is even possible. So stop trying to turn yourself into the Walking Dead version of yourself. You don't want to go back to an old way of being, because then you're just a zombie self. Then you're just this unconscious, half asleep, kind of sleepwalking through life, just looking for comfort, looking for distraction, looking for ways to soothe and numb yourself. That was the old you. Sleepwalking through your days, miserable and half dead, is not an option anymore. Showing up to work at jobs you don't care about, to be present in relationships where you don't feel safe or honored or loved, to continue to fake your way through life, pretending that it's great and that you're fulfilled and that you're satisfied when you're not, that isn't an option anymore. This new life requires all of you. This new life requires expansion and growth and moving beyond. This new life is not going to necessarily be understood, especially by the parts of you that only seek comfort and familiarity. If you're letting the comfortable parts of you choose, if you're letting the parts of you that are addicted to distraction and familiarity, you will never get anywhere. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me, all of my information is below in the show notes. Also, remember that I have channel memberships now. Channel members are receiving a whole bunch of good stuff. We just recently did the first monthly energy tune-up, which is a monthly gathering for creator level members. It was for the Lionsgate portal, and it was next level stuff. It was energy that I have never really experienced in the 10, 15 years that I've been doing this, and it lives here on my channel as a replay. So if you're interested in that, you can join at the creator level, and you can get access to that replay. Also, I want to share with you about my event coming up here on August 25th. It's a Sunday. It is Building the Inner Temple. The inner temple is your place of connection. It is your place of communion. It is the place within where your seat of personal power, your sovereign seat of authority resides. And building your inner temple is something that I do quite often in my one-on-one sessions. It's also something that I've done in my own life, and it is a powerful, powerful experience. And I'm offering an event on August 25th. It's 2 hours. It's going to be a combination of journaling, combination of channeled insight, a combination of some group work, energy work, and then really getting in there and beginning to build your own inner temple. So I hope you'll join me on the 25th. I have the information below under the events tab, and you can find more information on my website, amar.energy. What you're showing me is it's like when Superman wants to pull open the, Clark Kent shirt, and he opens his shirt, and then you see the Superman costume, the Superman insignia beneath that shirt. And it's like you're trying so hard to open it. You're trying so hard. You want so much to open that shirt, to expose that true identity of your superhero self. But there's something in the solar plexus that has it blocked. There's this old belief that just stands in the way. And when they show me the solar plexus, what they're talking about is, that is the center where spirit begins to know itself in form. The solar plexus is the first of what we could call those material chakras, right? The energy center that begins to deal with the physical experience, the human experience, the physical earthly plane. And so when I feel this tension of like there's this desire to like open it up and to really expose the true self. And it's no mistake that when Clark Kent is opening the shirt and revealing the Superman insignia, the Superman logo, it's at the heart, right? So it's about opening that heart and allowing the true identity to shine forth. But there's this push and pull, there's this struggle between the solar plexus and the heart. And it's like it's almost like you open the heart and then the solar plexus, a set of hands reaches up from the solar plexus and closes it again. And then you open it and you close it and you open it and close it. So it feels like this back and forth. And I can understand why it feels exhausting. I can understand why it feels like a little bit like aggravating, like, oh, come on already. Why can't we just do it? Why isn't it just clear? Why can't I just find it or clarify it? Or it's like the idea of you have this great idea, you have this brilliant insight or this epiphany or this inspiration, and then you sit down to write it or you sit down to share it, and then all of a sudden it just dissolves, it just collapses, like it just evaporates from your brain, and you're just sitting there like completely blank, and you don't know what to say, and you don't know what to write, or you don't know what to create. And I think that actually the point of this tension, of this back and forth, is it's kind of like the push and pull is like starting the motor. The push and pull is actually the kinetic motion that is building the momentum. And there's this push and pull that the mind thinks that it's keeping you safe. The mind thinks that, the old identity, the old story, the old pattern, the old path, the old, experience and belief system. Of course, the mind always thinks that what it is doing is keeping you safe, even though it's not. It's like the 5-year-old thinking that if they just scribble in the checkbook that they're somehow balancing the budget. It's a very sweet and well-intended thing, but just like the 5-year-old is just sort of modeling what they've seen, their parents do, it's the same thing. The mind is just modeling what you've already done. The limitation of the mind is that it can only perceive what has happened up until this point. The mind can only know what has happened and what is happening right now. So in essence, the mind is just a way to categorize and catalog historical information, but the mind has no idea of where to go beyond. The mind is not the genius. The mind is not the visionary. The mind is not the creator. The mind is the cataloger. I've said this a million times. This was a message that used to come through all of the time. Like trying to understand the new experience or the vision through the mind is like trying to get your email through the calculator. It's just not what it was built for. But I think that what's really happening is you at your highest level, your higher self, your expanded self, that infinite self, you are aware of this. And so you're allowing the tension, the push and pull between the mind and the heart, and the mind is the head, right? And it just sort of manifests itself in the solar plexus, because that's the seat of our personal power. That's the seat of the power relative to our human identity. So whatever limitations are present in the mind will show up as a block or challenge or struggle or resistance in the solar plexus. And so that punch that you get in the gut, that is just evidence that you're currently believing something that isn't true. And the true self, your expanded self, knows this and is allowing the tension, the push and the pull, the struggle between the head and the heart to allow this momentum to build. And there is a compression breakthrough. There is this realization, because here's the thing, you're already in the new reality. You're already in the new world. The breakthrough has already happened. You've already landed on the shores of the new world. And now it's just about giving yourself enough lived experience so that the mind starts to get it. Because what the mind needs is case evidence. What the mind needs is historical context to say, like, oh, right, when we went there last week, we got our food from that location. Oh, and the last time we needed water, we went to this location and got our water. And oh, when we built this kind of shelter before, it was successful and kept us safe and kept us warm. And so we'll build that again. So really what you're doing right now is you are living the new reality, whether or not you are aware of it, you are experiencing it currently. And so what the mind is doing is cataloging. The mind is the observer. It's the scientist out in the field taking notes of what they see and what they experience, and they're documenting. So it's about understanding that even though it feels confusing, even though it feels uncertain, even though it feels fuzzy and foggy and unclear, that's actually a good thing. Lean into the unknown, lean into the awkwardness, lean into the, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm feeling a little bit clunky. I'm feeling a little bit weird. I'm not feeling super, graceful. I'm not feeling really, really fluent, or I'm not feeling like the words that I'm sharing are particularly eloquent or elegant or well spoken. And that's okay. When you're first learning a new language, especially as an adult, you're going to sound like a kid at first. Like as you know, when you're learning a new language, especially as an adult or a second language, all you know is ball, boy, car, house, tree. You just know the nouns, you just know the subjects. And over time, you become more fluent. Over time, you become more fluid and more, what's the word I'm looking for? More masterful in the language. And eventually, you begin to sound like a native speaker. You begin to sound, you speak French like the French do, or at least really, really close. So it's about understanding that the progression of your knowledge, of your skills, and your lived experience, that's when it becomes wisdom. Knowledge can only become wisdom when it is applied. You read knowledge in a book, you gain knowledge from your day-to-day experience, and then wisdom is what it becomes when you live it and you have an embodied experience of it. It becomes muscle memory. It becomes neural pathways. It's something that, sort of embeds itself into your DNA. So now it's something that you just know how to do effortlessly. It's like tying your shoes or eating with a fork. You weren't born knowing how to do that. And when you first started to learn how to tie your shoes, it was really, really frustrating. And over time, it just becomes something that's effortless, it's elegant, it's second nature, and you don't even have to think about it. So the push and pull between the head and the heart will continue to soften, and that tension will continue to build until you have that breakthrough moment where now you're no longer questioning it. Now you're not doubting it. So the message here is lean into the unknown, accept the unknown, accept the uncertainty. It's like any other natural evolutionary process, like puberty, for an example. When you are in a natural setting and everything is allowed to occur in the natural way, according to the natural rhythms and cycles that govern all things, you just naturally grow up and you go from a child into a toddler, into an adolescent, into a preteen, into a teenager, and then a young adult. It just happens. You don't have to do anything. It's like the change of seasons, another evolutionary expansionary cycle. It just goes from spring to summer to winter to fall, or fall to winter, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to manage the process. You don't have to force it or jumpstart it or activate it. It just happens. It's the same thing as you are beginning, or excuse me, you are continuing to really begin to understand what life is like in the new world, what life is like in the new reality, what your experience is going to be in this elevated, exalted timeline. You are there. The work that you have been doing is paying off. And what they're saying is stop believing that because you don't know how to do it from the mental perspective means that you're never going to understand it, or means that something is still standing in your way. I think for many people, the challenge here is understanding that and this is a message that comes through all of the time and is actually in my book, Notes from the Higher Self. It's an old message that says healing is for the human. Healing moves you backwards. When your arm is broken, you want to go back to the state before it was broken, when it was healed and whole. Healing is for the human part of you. You acknowledge the trauma, you acknowledge the moment when you were wounded or became broken, and you go back in time to a previous period in your life. You sort of rescue that part of you, essentially, that was the broken one or the traumatized one or the wounded one, and you bring it all up to date. You bring it all up to speed. You bring it all up to the current moment, and that is what the healing process is for. But healing is just the beginning. Healing is not the end. And so many of us who have been on this journey have this misconception that, oh, I'm healed and now everything is fine. Oh, I'm healed and now it's just going to magically fall from the sky. Oh, I'm healed, so now I can levitate. Now I can instantly manifest. Now I can walk through walls. No, healing brings you to the point where you can now begin the transformation process, because healing is for the human and it moves you backwards. Transformation is for the entirety of you. Transformation is inclusive of the human and the metahuman, the non-physical self, the higher self, the expanded infinite self, and that is what moves you forward. That is what expands you beyond. That is what moves you across the threshold into the new world. So healing brings you to the threshold of transformation. Healing is what prepares you for the transformation, because you can't transform if parts of you are still stuck in the past, if parts of you are still living according to old identities, old beliefs, old wounds, and unresolved stuff. That's why they often say the only way out is through. You can't get around your pain. You have to walk through your pain, and you walk through the valley of the shadow of your own death so that you can reclaim yourself, bring yourself up to speed, really, and show to yourself that I am the one in charge now. I am the sovereign. I am the being. I am the master creator. I am the one one driving the bus in tandem with spirit and self. And you also begin to believe and understand that the idea of spirit and the higher self is not separate from you. That's another thing that I think many of us are currently dealing with, is this old belief that somehow the higher self, the expanded self, the infinite self, the magical self, the soul, whatever you call it, is somehow separate, that it's somehow out there, and you have to sort of aspire to be like that, and you have to beg for acceptance, you have to beg for forgiveness, you have to beg for guidance. No, you are that, and it is you. So when you begin to renegotiate and rewrite your definitions of who and what you are, that is when you effortlessly move into the transformation process. That is when you effortlessly move into the expanded self and move across that threshold. So I think for many of you, it's really coming to the realization that while your healing is over, now your life is just beginning in many ways. The freedom, the liberation, the master experiences, the creation and the manifestation consciously and deliberately on purpose, now is when it really begins. Now is when you begin to build the real world, the new world in real time. If you think of yourself as an explorer, when your ship finally lands on the new continent or the new island, it's not built for you. You still have to do the work of building the town, building the shelters, finding out where you're going to grow your food and where do you get your water and who are the other populations that live here and how do we get along with them? How do we co-create and collaborate and coexist with them? And that's where you are. You are at the moment now where you are beginning to see the new reality dawning, and you're realizing like, oh, wow, I am real. Oh, I am actually in this new reality. And so it feels weird at first because you've never experienced this before. It feels strange at first because you haven't lived it yet and you have no history. So in many ways, it's about ceasing to rely on the mental, intellectual, logical understanding, because again, the mind has no frame of reference. It's saying does not compute. I do not have that data. File, 404 error, file not found. I don't have the information of how to live in this reality before because I've never done it. There's another thing that's happening right now, and people are beginning to, it's this self-sorting process. I've been talking about this for quite some time, that the separation of realities and the sort of division of realities is happening, and it's happening energetically first. It is like two separate bandwidths that exist parallel or on top of one another. Think of like television. There are, several hundred channels, and even though you're not watching another channel, those shows are still happening in some way. Those shows are still available to you. You just don't have access to it because that's not where you are focused. That's what this separation of worlds and the separation of realities is that you are tapped into a different frequency than those who are still asleep, those who are still unaware, those who haven't awakened yet, or who are not going to awaken. That's another piece of this, is not everybody came here, not every soul came here to have an experience of awakening in form, to have an experience of ascension or expansion in form. A lot of souls came here to be placeholders for the old reality until such time as the old reality was no longer viable. And as that old reality continues to diminish and that bandwidth gets narrower and narrower, it can hold less. And so it's essentially people are starting to self-sort, and the souls are deciding like, okay, time's up. I'm not going through the awakening or ascension process in a human form this time. So it's time for me to exit and either go through that in another plane, in another reality, in another version, or to come back, reincarnate, and then go through it in a different way, in a new form. Suffice it to say, the self-sorting process, again, is happening of its own accord. Every single being on the planet right now is a sovereign master creator, and each of them is living according to the plan that they have made for themselves for this lifetime. Now, the beauty of a plan is it can always be renegotiated and it can always be rewritten, but there are some souls who just are not interested, or who are just not a part of the big awakening experience that is happening right now. So what you're going to see is people are just going to start separating naturally. You are going to start seeing like, oh, I just don't talk to them anymore. Oh, we're just not as close as we used to be. And there won't necessarily be a fallout or a conflict or an explosion. There might be something that is sort of volatile that kind of separates you like a flash bomb, but it's really just happening of its own accord. It's like you've reached this point where the path is diverging. Some people are going this way towards the future potential. Some people are going this way towards another loop and another round on the path of being asleep or being unaware or being unwilling or being stubborn or being locked into only I believe it when I see it kind of mentality, this division mentality of us versus them, that is the old way. If you are in a place of division, if you are in a place of judgment of those people over there or the problem, and we people over here are the right ones, if you are in that either or mindset, you are not in your center. The center is the place of unity. The center is the place of embodiment. The center is the place of being integrated from the tip of your toes to the top of your head and all the way up the chain, understanding that you are all of it and all of it is you. So from that unified perspective, you see that anything that still triggers you or activates you into separation or division is there to teach you how to reclaim your center. So allow those who are insistent upon the old ways to have the old ways. Allow those who are interested and curious and awake and aware and moving up and beyond, allow them to move up and beyond. You cannot control anybody else's experience. You can serve as an example. You can serve as a lighthouse. You can serve as one who shows what is possible. And it is up to another to decide if they want to follow your example, if they are curious about another way to live, if they believe that, wow, maybe there is something more or there is something to all that crazy woo-woo stuff you've been telling me, but that has nothing to do with you. This sorting process is happening naturally. This sorting process is like if you had a jar of vinegar and oil and you shook it up, it would look like it was homogenized and mixed up at first, but over time it is naturally going to separate, and you don't have to do anything for it to separate. It separates naturally, and that's where you are. So if you are in the unknown, congratulations, you are moving towards, you are actually in the new reality, and you're in the process of figuring out your place within it and what you want and how you're going to live in the reality that you are going to experience. And if you are finding yourself in a familiar, same old place of like, oh yeah, this is familiar. Oh yeah, I totally know how to do this, then it's probably not a new path. You're probably deluding yourself in some way. You're probably still living in some sort of illusion or delusion, and that's okay. All humans do it. So when you find yourself going, wait a minute, this is the same shit, but a different day. This is another loop on the merry-go-round. This is Groundhog Day, waking up in the same reality over and over and over. Use that as an opportunity to see that you have reached the dead end and you are currently just spinning and chasing your tail. Stop. Find your center and then begin to ask, okay, Spirit, where is the way forward? Where is the way upward? Where is the way to expand? And the answer will always be some version of coming into the center and finding that connection and then proceeding, then deciding, and then choosing and moving. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to hang out with me today, to watch this video. If you have any questions, my contact information is in the details below. You can follow me on Instagram at Amar Energy, here on YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe, and share this with your circle and your friends and people that you think would find this interesting. Thank you for watching. Have a great month. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.